Good evening. Welcome to another edition of the 411 Talk Zone radio show, Wednesday edition, as I go live. Now, before I go on, I want you all to check out the video I did last night on Do Mothers Pay Child Support? Now, yes, the video was taken from a video I saw from a newly appointed judge named Vonda B. And I know some of these court shows may feature some actors, but Vonda B, and I looked at her bio, she was a lawyer. Hey, Celine, how you doing? She was a lawyer, and she did child support cases. So her cases, and the name of her show is Support Court, and they're based off of real live cases. So when I do a video, I could do it from I Want a Mama's Boy or Smothered, the reality shows. However, what you see in some of those reality shows takes place in real life, and my job is to break it down, and that's what I'm going to do tonight because I'm going to get more into some psychology tonight. I'm going to talk about the Napoleon Syndrome, borderline personality disorder. If I have time permitting, I'm going to talk about Stockholm Syndrome and schizophrenia. And of course, I'm going to have an open panel. I want everybody to like, share, and subscribe to the 401 Talk Zone radio show. And also check out my second channel, the QCIS channel. On that channel, you get a daily dose of science, technology, engineering, and math. And I've already put the link in the chat for individuals who want to come up on the panel. Now, I like to do everything in chronological order. And what I'm going to talk about first is Napoleon Syndrome. Now, if you're not familiar with Napoleon, well, Napoleon was, I believe he was from France. And Napoleon, he went in exile when I believe France got into a war, and I believe they lost. Don't quote me on that. I'm not a history buff, but I know I have individuals in the audience who can clarify that for me. But when we deal with the Napoleon syndrome or the Napoleon complex, however you see it, or however which way you're going to see it, a number of people refer it to the small man's syndrome. Now, let me go ahead and let, let me let me go and share my screen here because this is going to be a good topic. And here we go. Now, of course, I'm going to put this in my link for your listening pleasure. This is the article. And also, be sure to vote in the poll. So far, I have 4 votes. And the poll states, do today's American citizens have mental health issues? Right now, out of 4 votes, I have 4 yeses, equaling 100%. With all that said, I'm going to get on with it. I want to talk about the Napoleon Syndrome. Just bear with me. Let me get something off my screen here so it could make it very easily. Let's get this. You have a lot of these crazy commercials out here, and all right. I'm just going to go ahead and take it from the top. All right, when we deal with Napoleon syndrome or the Napoleon complex, what we're talking about is it's a term that is colloquial, and it's occasionally used in psychiatry, psychoanalysis, and psychology. Now, when we deal or talk about the Napoleon complex, it is basically associated with short people, especially short men. And the reason why I say that because a number of short men have an inferiority complex. This is what we call the short man's complex or the Napoleon complex. And what these individuals do is basically overcompensate for their stature by being excessively hostile, quarrelsome, belligerent in their interpersonal relationships. So at work, you may work for a short boss. Because that short boss doesn't get the respect that a tall boss would get, the short boss is going to show that he is powerful. So he's going to go on ego trips. He's going to use bullying tactics to try to intimidate his employees. Now, basically, individuals who have this disposition are claimed to be very egotistical as well. Now, a fictional example is depicted in John Steinbeck's Of Mice and Men. Now, the character, whose name is Curly, was a shorty who always felt obliged. He had to prove his worth by picking fights with bigger men. However, the Napoleon complex is said to motivate other forms of behavior besides interpersonal violence and aggression. So, most innocuously, a short male might make himself feel taller by placing home and hangings or home wall hangings lower than normal. Now, here's what I'm going to say about the Napoleon complex. I'm going to look at it like this. These are individuals that, in my humble opinion, they don't feel worth anything. These are the individuals who might get teased. And sometimes to feel taller, they may wear some elevator shoes, shoes with higher heels, give them 2 or 3 inches. So, in contrast, such persons may be driven to emulate by supposed self or low self-esteem by basically pursuing high ambitious goals. In fact, the eponymic source for the term is Napoleon Bonaparte, whose military and amorous conquests have been attributed to the desire to compensate for his diminutive size. Nevertheless, attribution or attribution basically lacks merit insofar as Napoleon was actually a bit taller than the average Frenchman of his day. Now, his alleged shortness derived from a commonplace misunderstanding of the contemporary French inch, which was 7% longer than the modern English inch, as well as mistranslation of his nickname Le Petit Corporal into Little Corporal, which petite indicates affection rather than dimension. So, thus, ironically, Napoleon is not a genuine example of the Napoleon complex. Indeed, the fact that he surrounded himself with an elite guard of soldiers who were at least 6 feet tall suggests that he was not at all defensive about his own height. But again, when we deal with Napoleon, we deal with again, it's a complex. It's supposed to be a short people's complex. Now, the Napoleon complex is often associated with the name of Alfred Adler, a former associate of Sigmund Freud and the founder of individual psychology. So, a key concept in Adler's theory was the inferiority complex. Now, although psychological condition does take many forms, and especially crucial one is the sense of organ inferiority with respect to some physical trait. So basically, the concept may have been partially inspired by Adler's own experiences as a sickly child, including a bout with rickets that prevented him from walking until he was 4. So basically, under special circumstances, the individual may respond to organ inferiority by overcompensating for the disability. An illustration is Wilma Rudolph. Now, if you don't know who Wilma Rudolph is, she was the first American woman. She was a track star, and she won at least 3 medals in track and field at the Olympic Games. So, just to pinpoint off what I saw and read when it came to the Napoleon complex, talking about the man with the disability and Wilma Rudolph, you have to understand that other times overcompensation will adopt a more oblique or symbolic form. Hence, because short persons cannot easily make themselves physically taller, they tend to appear psychologically taller, more dominant, assertive, even antagonistic or arrogant. So, for some individuals of potential genius, the solution may be an extraordinary need for power that takes the guise of military conquest. Again, I'm talking about the Napoleon Syndrome or the Napoleon complex. So, according to the Napoleon complex, it can be viewed as a particular implication of the Adlerian psychology. So, even so, Adler himself did not invent the term. Despite identifying numerous complexes of various kinds, the Napoleon complex was not included amongst them, nor was Napoleon used to illustrate overcompensation. Moreover, the complex does not constitute a recognized personality disorder in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Orders. That's known as the DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Orders, and that's published by the APA, which is the American Psychiatric Association. So the term is seldom granted an entry in encyclopedias and dictionaries devoted to psychological science and, of course, practice. So, in addition, the Napoleon complex is almost never the explicit subject of scientific research in the professional journals of psychology, psychoanalysis, or psychiatry. So, in the main, it represents a pseudo-scientific term that is popular amongst journalists who basically want to provide an apparent explanation for the behavior of politicians, entrepreneurs, and other celebrities who happen to be shorter than average. So it has become a mainstay of folk psychology. So the expression at times being evoked to explicate the odd behavior of a friend or acquaintance. Again, a good evening, antisocial. Welcome to the live stream. Drop the link for anybody that wants to come up. I'm talking about the Napoleon complex. So, yet, somewhat surprisingly, the Napoleon complex has recently been introduced as a scientific concept in a totally unexpected discipline, namely evolutionary biology. So basically, an animal species that feature male competition for reproductive opportunities and resources, it is sometimes the smaller rather than the larger male who likely initiates the aggressive behavior. So this phenomenon has been subjected to the CBA. CBA stands for cost benefit analysis. And that basically indicates the conditions under which such seemingly maladaptive behavior is most likely to be selected. Nonetheless, it is clear that this usage departs significantly from the original meaning of the term. So the novel application may therefore not revive the Napoleon complex as a technical term in the social sciences. So to sum it up, basically, when we deal with the Napoleon complex, some people classify it as a short man's complex. It does deal with shorter men who have an inferiority complex to taller men, and this is why you have some shorter men. You can see it in the workplace. What's going on, Men's Daily? Welcome to the chat. You can see it in the workplace if you have small men who are bosses. And I've actually worked with one who was a boss. He was about 5'4", 5'5", and he tried to bully his way around the workplace. Now, people like me didn't like him, and I know back in the 90s, if we had gone that far and I was allowed to do what I wanted to do, when somebody that short and arrogant upset me, he may have, he would have been wearing my knuckles under his chin. I would have chin checked him, and I would have been happy to do it. Here's what I'm going to say. When it comes to any type of inferiority complex, whether it's Napoleon, whether it's power, or someone who is power hungry or arrogance, generally I find people with an inferiority complex, and this is just my personal opinion. Good evening, Samantha P. I just find people with an inferiority complex, or ones who have the Napoleon Syndrome, they tend to be a little insecure. Now, again, just what I described to you all. People that lack something, they tend to overcompensate. So in their mind, it could make them equal to the person that has a little more. It's almost a delusion involved with that. I know that being a short man, now I'm 5 feet 8 inches myself, I do not have an inferiority complex when it comes to somebody taller. In fact, it used to be the average height of a man was 5'9" at one time. It's probably 5'10". What's going on, Deshaun? Welcome to the chat. Not everybody's going to be 6 feet tall. And, you know, one thing that does get me when I see some of these videos like Kendra G, and she has a number of women on her channel, one of the first things that they advocate is, I want somebody 6 feet tall. And when I hear that, I don't get upset about it, but a number of women who are asking for men who are 6 feet tall think that that man is going to protect them. Now, just because you have a lot of height, it doesn't mean you can fight. There have been times to where a shorter man who knows how to fight has beaten a taller man. And of course, vice versa. But when you watch Kendra G's videos, or when you watch some old KS videos, they love talking about individuals. And some of these women are 5'2", 5'3" themselves, and they want somebody 6'2". And I can hear a number of women on Kendra G's show that says she won't deal with anybody. There was one, I believe there was one. She wouldn't deal with anybody under 6'2". Samantha P6 looks like we all agree that obviously mental health issues today. I guess the next question would be, to what degree does everyone think it's saturated? Oh, that's a good question. I believe that there are a number of people who have mental health issues. They don't want to bring it to the forefront. In fact, a number of people who have mental health issues are basically normal. like you and me. Now, would something like anger be a mental health issue? I mean, anger can be a reaction, but a number of us do get angry. Now, there's a reason why some of us have mental health issues. And this is why seeking help should be the number one reason. But there are individuals who don't want to admit that they have mental health issues because they feel that it's embarrassing and that they're going to get some pushback, or they're going to get some individuals who are ignorant of the situation and they might laugh at them. Well, I'm going to tell you, when you have any type of problem, you should talk about it. I mean, if you are having an issue with a tooth, what are you going to do? You're going to go to the dentist. Why? Because if you don't, that tooth is going to continue to bother you. Now, you might not like the results of going to the dentist. And of course, if you have a mental health issue, you might not like the result of what's going to come out of the therapy session. But you have to look at it like this. You have any type of complex, you have to look at yourself and ask this question. And let me just break it down to the Napoleon complex. If you have a Napoleon complex, the right way to overcompensate for not having to be 6 feet tall is you have to be who you are. Okay? You have to understand that not everybody's going to be 6 feet tall. Not everybody's going to be 7 feet tall. And there are going to be some people who are shorter than you. I watched this show called the Seven Little Johnsons. Now, their family, you talk about overcompensating, they do. And they're like 4 feet tall, under 5 feet, but they get a lot done. They get a lot done. And one thing I see about the Seven Little Johnsons, and this show comes on TLC, and there's another one that has the roll-offs on it as well. They're short people. They're midgets. But one thing I see in those short people, they don't let it bother them. Why? Because in their minds, they know they're normal people. And from the mind, it goes into the heart. And Trent, who's the father in the Seven Little Johnsons, he's still a leader. And the mom has a lot of sense as well. They get along as a family. In fact, with the Seven Little Johnsons, they still drive. Now, there was a show that featured some black women on it from Atlanta. They were little people. Forgot the name of the show, but it used to come on. But they sang, they danced, they did everything that people who were taller than them did. I'm not going to say normal because some people are born short. But again, to alleviate the low self-esteem, because you have ignorant people everywhere. When they see something different, they're always going to criticize unless something happens to them. But in the long run, you got to feel good about yourself. It's not always about how much money you make, although money does make people feel good. It's what you can do with your mind. Your mind controls your body. Again, Samantha P., my husband is 5'9", a huge comparison to me. Women want to feel tiny. I think a lot of height thing has to do with women being taller and fatter than ever. That's a good point, Samantha B. I find that today women are a little taller, and yes, they are a little more heavier, and that could be basically the, the tall thing, hereditary. Some of them come from tall families. Now, as far as larger, could be some of the chemicals that they're putting in food, lack of exercise, spending more time on social media. They're not getting out doing any simple walking, and then of course that's another issue, the overweight. But when it comes to tall, you have a number of women who are taller today than they were 10 years ago. And I know on the dating scene, it is very hard for a taller woman to actually get a date because a number of your taller men, they want shorter women as well. And taller women, they don't want short men. Now, in Hollywood, you used to have people like Danny DeVito. He was a short man. But, you know, when it comes to height, not everybody is going to be tall. So if you have the need to overcompensate what you're doing, you're just hurting yourself. Certainly, it's very competitive out there, particularly in the workforce. When you don't have the height or the strength of others, yes, you're going to have to push. You're going to have to push a little harder. I understand. However, you have to be realistic about yourself. No matter how ambitious you are, it's not going to change the fact that you are going to be the same height whether you overextend yourself or not. So you have to be comfortable with who you are. And comfortability can build confidence, even in a society that's competitive. And I know here in America, we tend to put a label on everything, especially if it is different from us. Now, again, I got the poll question up. Do today's American citizens have mental issues? So far, I have 9 votes, and all of them say yes. And thank you. Let's continue to get the likes up. And I don't worry about the numbers. I got 3 people watching this content. Let me tell you something about this content. It may not be for some of you. Okay. Coming over here to the 411 Talk Zone radio show, this is not the beef sector here. This is not entertainment. I'm actually telling you about real issues that I look up and I explain to you. So I'm going to say this. If it's not for you, then you don't have to watch it. But I guarantee there are a number of you out there who have these mental issues that I am talking about. Shout out to you, brother Deshaun. Now, moving on to the next topic, I'm going to talk about schizophrenia. Now, schizophrenia is, some people call it the crazy person's disease. So, what do we mean by schizophrenia? Here's what I'm going to tell you. It's basically a chronic, severe mental disorder that basically affects the way a person thinks, expresses emotions, acts, and the big one is perceives reality and how they relate to others. Again, just close your mind and think about what I just said. Emotions are included. The perception of reality, how you relate to others, how a person thinks and acts. So basically, though schizophrenia isn't as common as other major mental illnesses, it can be the most chronic and disabling. So basically, people with schizophrenia often have problems doing well in society, and that includes at work, school, and relationships. So they might feel frightened and withdrawn, and they could appear to have lost touch with reality. So this lifelong disease can't be cured, but can be controlled with proper treatment. Now, again, I'm talking about schizophrenia. Okay. I'm going to I'm going to say this. Contrary to proper belief, schizophrenia is not a split multiple personality. Schizophrenia involves a psychosis, a type of mental illness in which a person can't tell what's real from what's imagined. At times, people with psychotic disorders lose touch with reality. The world may seem like a jumble of confusing thoughts, images, and sounds. So their behavior may be very strange and, of course, even shocking. So, a sudden change in personality and behavior, which happens on people who have lost touch with reality, that's called a psychotic episode. Now, how severe schizophrenia is varies basically from one person to another. So you may have some people that only have one psychotic episode, while others have many episodes during a lifetime, but lead relatively normal lives between. So others may have some trouble functioning over time with little improvement between full blown psychotic episodes. Again, when we deal with with the psychosis of schizophrenia, we're basically talking about individuals who have basically lost touch with reality. Now, again, it can be severe and it basically depends on the person. So, schizophrenia symptoms seem to worsen and improve in cycles known as relapses and remissions. So the big question is, what are the early symptoms of schizophrenia? And I want to say shout out to the Angry Snowman. He's the one that actually put up the idea for me to talk about schizophrenia. So, okay, what are the early symptoms? Well, the condition usually shows its first signs in men who are in their late teens and early 20s, and it mostly affects women in their early 20s and 30s. So, the period when symptoms first start and before full psychosis is called the prodromal period. It can last days, weeks, and even years, and it can be hard to spot because there's usually no specific trigger. You might only notice subtle behavioral changes, especially in teens. Now, what's included in that? Salute, brother Nate Dog. Hey, you did a good job on Bernard Riley's chat. Know you had AC. I saw some of it. I still got a little bit more of it to watch. I'm talking about schizophrenia for those who have joined. So, when we talk about schizophrenia, what are the symptoms? Well, if you're going to school, you're going to have a change of grades. You're going to have trouble concentrating. You could get angry. So that means you may have tempers, flaring tempers. Now, some people might call it insomnia, and it could be tied to insomnia, and that's a difficulty sleeping. And then you may want to withdraw from society altogether. You may feel burned out. Again, I am not a psychologist, but I just study the topic because I enjoy doing this topic because behavior is something that we need to know. We can learn a lot about ourselves when we can study our own behaviors. So, positive symptoms of schizophrenia. So, in this case, positive, it doesn't mean good. It refers to added thoughts or actions that aren't based in reality. They're sometimes called psychotic symptoms, and they can include, it goes back to something that I said before, delusions. Yes, schizophrenia and delusions are tied together. And what is a delusion? They're false, mixed, and sometimes strange beliefs that aren't based in reality and that the person refuses to give up even when shown the facts. This is what the late KS had: the sign, shame, insult, guilt and need to be right, you go round and round with a person, whether you bring the facts out or not. And shout out to Brother Nate and Bernard Riley. You may have seen some schizophrenia with some individuals when Brother Nate brought out the facts, and there was one person who got a little triggered and he nearly exploded. You go watch that Bernard Riley video and you'll know exactly what and who I'm talking about. So, basically, for example, a person with delusions may believe that people can hear their thoughts, that they are God or the devil, or that people are putting thoughts into their head or plotting against them. It can also be paranoia when you think something is happening to you when it really isn't. Now you have, you ever hallucinated? Well, hallucinations. These involve sensations that aren't real, like hearing voices. That's the most common hallucination in people with schizophrenia. The voices may comment on the person's behavior, insult them, or give commands. Less common types include seeing things that aren't there, like smelling strange odors, having a funny taste in your mouth, and feeling sensations on your skin, even though nothing is touching your body. Then you have catatonia. In this condition, the person may stop speaking and their body may be in a fixed single position for a very long time. So, you have disorganized symptoms of schizophrenia, and they're basically positive symptoms that show that the person can't think clearly or respond as expected. And again, shout out to Brother Nate. Insane. I showed him the 2017 Tax Reform Act Trump signed, and he said it wasn't real. That's a form of schizophrenia, Brother Nate. You showed him the facts, and he still thought he was right. That's a form. That's all. And that's a form. That's the delusion. He didn't want to see your point. That's why I brought it up. Shout out to Samantha B. With limited impulse control, plus more of them, there is going to be more crimes committed by borderlines. Well, I'm going to get in that one tonight as well. Borderline personality disorder. Now, again, going back, when it comes to schizophrenia, we've dealt with positive schizophrenia, which at positive does not mean positive. But now we're going to go into more positive schizophrenia, but coming from a disorganized symptom. Now, when we deal with disorganized symptoms of schizophrenia, they're basically, again, positive systems that can make a person think. Well, let me back up a little bit. Let me slow down. Let me paraphrase it. Basically, this type of person is one who can't speak or think clearly. Examples: talking in sentences that don't make sense or using nonsense words, making it difficult for a person to communicate or hold a conversation. Shifting quickly from one thought to the next without obvious or logical connections between them. Moving slowly. Being unable to make decisions. Again, being unable to make decisions. Writing excessively, but without meaning. Here's one: forgetting or losing things. Forgetting or losing things. Repeating movements or gestures like pacing or walking in circles. Having problems making sense of everyday sights, sounds, and feelings. Those are the disorganized symptoms. Now, one of my favorite words, we have cognitive symptoms of schizophrenia. And this person, they're going to have trouble understanding information and using it to make decisions. Such a doctor might call this poor executive functioning. They're going to have trouble focusing or paying attention. They're going to have problems using their information immediately after learning it. Like this is called working memory. They're going to have problems recognizing that they have any problems. Now, we dealt with positive symptoms of schizophrenia. We dealt with cognitive symptoms of schizophrenia. So, what about negative symptoms of schizophrenia? Now, you're going to find out here the word negative doesn't mean bad. It basically notes the absence of normal behaviors in people with schizophrenia. So, your negative symptoms of schizophrenia include lack of emotion or limited range of emotions, withdrawal from friends and family, of course, social activities. You're going to be lethargic. And what I mean by lethargic, you're going to have less energy. You're not going to speak much. Your motivation is going to be lacking. When I talk about hobbies, why do we have hobbies? Because we seek pleasure. So when you have the negative symptom of schizophrenia, you just lose interest in life and you basically lose all the pleasure. And something else, you will have poor hygiene and, of course, grooming habits. So the question is, what causes schizophrenia? What causes schizophrenia? Well, the exact cause of schizophrenia isn't known, but like cancer and diabetes, schizophrenia is a real illness with a biological basis. And basically, researchers have uncovered a number of things that appear to make someone more likely to get schizophrenia, including genetics or heredity. Schizophrenia can run in families, which means a greater likelihood to have schizophrenia may be passed on from parents to their children. Brain chemistry and circuits. So basically, people that have any type of schizophrenia may not be able to regulate brain chemicals called neurotransmitters that control certain pathways or circuits of nerve cells that affect thinking and behavior. Your brain will be abnormal, or we call it brain abnormality. Now, research has found that in an abnormal brain, again, research has found that in an abnormal brain, that type of structure in people with schizophrenia, it doesn't apply to all people with schizophrenia, but it could affect people without the disease. And something else, environment, just like viral infections, exposure to toxins like marijuana or highly stressful situations may trigger schizophrenia in people whose genes make them more likely to get the disorder. So basically, schizophrenia more often surfaces when the body is having hormonal and physical changes, like those that happen during the teen and adult years. Again, thank you all for joining the chat. I'm talking about schizophrenia. I've already talked about the Napoleon Syndrome. I'm beginning in the BPD, borderline personality disorder, and I'm going to probably have Stockholm Syndrome. I will again, like I like to do, I will, I'm going to post the link to all the articles that I have gotten. This article comes from WebMD, and if you're interested in reading it, I have posted it in the chat. There you go. Read it, and you'll learn something. All right. I'm going to talk about who gets schizophrenia and how is it diagnosed. Okay. Anyone can get schizophrenia. It can affect people all over the world, regardless of race and culture. And it can also happen at any age. But again, schizophrenia generally appears in teenage years or early 20s. And when it comes to gender, schizophrenia affects both men and women equally. Although symptoms generally appear earlier in men, the earlier the symptoms start, the more severe the illnesses tend to be. So children over 5 can have schizophrenia, but it is rare before adolescence. So the way they diagnose it is if symptoms are present, the doctor will basically perform a complete medical history, and sometimes they will also perform a physical exam. Now, while there are no laboratory tests to basically diagnose schizophrenia, the doctor may use various tests and possibly blood tests or brain imaging studies to rule out other physical illness, intoxication. Now, intoxication is basically a substance induced psychosis as the cause of symptoms. Now, again, shout out to Celine. She's talking about the Sam Beckins channel. All right. Well, thank you for that. Thank you for that information. Make sure I catch that channel. All right. Here we go. Now, dealing with schizophrenia happens once the doctor goes through everything. The test to make sure there's nothing physical that happens. Well, if there's nothing physical after a test, the doctor may refer you to a psychologist or a psychiatrist. Now, you have to understand that once the physical is done, you're going to have someone who's in mental health, and they're basically trained to diagnose and treat mental illness. Now, psychiatrists and psychologists use specifically designed interviews and assessment tools to evaluate a person for a psychotic disorder. The therapist bases their diagnosis on the person's and family's report of symptoms and their observation of the person's attitude and behavior. And you know, when you go to the doctor, that's the first thing that they're going to ask you. Do you have any family illnesses? Because you know, a lot of these illnesses are basically they're passed down, hereditary. So getting back on to a person, what if they've been diagnosed with schizophrenia? Well, if they have at least 2 of the symptoms that I'm going to tell you about for 6 months, a person who's been diagnosed with schizophrenia may have 2 of these symptoms, and some of them you already are familiar with. The first one, and I've done videos on it, delusions. And there are a lot of delusions that are taking place here in America. Hallucinations, disorganized speech. Starting again, delusions. You can have hallucinations, disorganized speech, disorganized or catatonic behavior, and negative symptoms. Now, if you've been diagnosed for 6 months with the top 5, one of the symptoms has to be either disorganized speech, you may be hallucinating, or you're going to have delusions. And generally, I always see the top one. And I'm recognizing a lot of that behavior here on YouTube. Again, go to Kendra G's videos, and you're going to see a lot of individuals who are very delusional. And I believe some of them have schizophrenia. Now, when I say schizophrenia, these are individuals, they don't want to deal with facts. What they say is what they say. They don't perceive reality. They have an unrealistic view of the world. Again, those are examples right there that I can pinpoint. And you can see it in the streets as well. Now, getting back, when it comes to the 6 months The person must have a month of active symptoms. Why? Because it can be less with successful treatment. Symptoms should negatively affect them socially or at work, and it can't be caused by another condition. Now, with all that being stated, how is it treated? How is it treated? Because basically, the goal of schizophrenia treatment is to ease the symptoms and cut the chances of a relapse or return of symptoms. Treatment for schizophrenia may include medications. So, the primary medications used to treat schizophrenia are called antipsychotics. Now, these drugs don't cure schizophrenia, but they help relieve the most troubling symptoms, including thinking problems, delusions, and hallucinations. Now, you may have seen some of these drugs on television, like Thorazine, Proxolin, Haldol, Loxapine, Trilofine, Navane, and Stelazine. And one thing I will tell you about medicines, now those are the older ones. Now, the newer ones that you see as I continue to go down. Uh, Abilify, Aristata, Saphris, Rexulti, Vraylar, Clozaril, Fanet, Capla, Latuda, Zyprexa, Labalvi, Invega Sustenna, Invega Trenza, Seroquel, Resperdal, and Geodin. Now, again, some of these drugs that you see on TV taken for some of these, you got to understand that they may not have been approved by the FDA. So again, I want you to note this, that clozapine is the only FDA approved medication for treating schizophrenia that is resistant to other treatments. It can also be used to lessen suicidal behaviors in those with schizophrenia who are at risk. So you have CSC, Coordinated Specialty Care. This is a team approach toward treating schizophrenia because the first symptoms of schizophrenia, when they appear, what happens is that they combine medicine and therapy with social services, employment, and of course, educational interventions. So you need to have your family as involved as possible, because if you want to help a patient, you got to catch it early. Then you have your psychosocial therapy. Now, again, while medicine will help relieve symptoms of schizophrenia, various psychosocial treatments can help with the behavioral, psychological, social, and occupational problems that go along with the illnesses. Now, through therapy, patients can also manage their symptoms. They have to learn to manage their systems before they can manage it. Now, what you do is you basically identify early warning signs of relapse, come up with a relapse prevention plan, and the psychosocial therapies include, of course, rehabilitation, and that focuses on social skills and job training to help people with schizophrenia function in the community and live as independently as possible. Then you have cognitive remediation, and that involves learning techniques to make up for problems with information processing. And basically, that uses drills and computer based exercises to strengthen mental skills that involve attention, memory, planning, and of course, organization. Shout out to Abandon, North Jersey. I take Risperdal. Okay. All right. So you must have a form of schizophrenia. And Risperdal is definitely one of them. Now, again, I'm going to put the link in the chat for those who want to come up. It's in the chat. For those who don't, you can sit back and I'm going to continue to go on with my topic. All right. All right. We're coming down the home stretches of schizophrenia here. All right. There, when we deal with ways to help somebody with schizophrenia, there's also individual psychotherapy, and individual psychotherapy is a good program to help individuals better understand their illness so they can cope with the illness and they can improve problem solving skills. And of course, some of the best support, family therapy. And with family therapy, that can help members who don't have schizophrenia become a better support system for the family member who has schizophrenia. Then there's support groups, because whether you know it or not, you're probably going to need all of these at the beginning. One of the major problems with people with mental health issues is, we talk a lot about medicines, but it's support. And it's the people who don't have it, friends and family. They might be impatient or they might not understand schizophrenia. And then what happens is there's always going to be a lot of conflict. So you should be educated on what the illness is when you have it or if you don't have it. And if all that fails, then there's hospitalization. And this is going to be an arena where individuals are going to be treated as outpatients. And why? Because a person may have severe symptoms, they may harm themselves or others, and they basically can't take care of themselves at home. You hope it doesn't go that way. Shout out to my man Nate. What's going on, brother Nate?
What up, brother Leon? How you doing, man?
Hey, man, that was you did a good Bernard Riley, boy. That was and I brought that up, brother, because you were explaining to one of the brothers. I saw that you brought the facts up. We're not finished watching it. You brought the facts up, and the brother, and even Sir Tice was in there, and that was an example of schizophrenia because you had the facts. I saw myself, and he thought you all didn't know anything because I know who that was. That was AC, one of
Yes,
Red's
sir.
boys.
Yes, sir.
The problem I do have, and we can take a moment to really tie this into politics. The problem I have with a number of individuals, particularly on the left, is they really don't see the real world. This is why they want to push their agendas on the rest of us, uh, in their behavior. And I'm gonna do a video later on. It Their behavior is very deviant. Now they don't see it. They're like the smoker brother who's smoking a cigarette, and the person who doesn't smoke will tell them your smoking stinks. They don't believe it stinks because they're immune to it. Well, if you think about it, the left in this country, and you got some people on the right too,
Sure.
they are very, very immune to their perception of the real world. That's why they try to tell us how to think, especially when we deal with a number of black men, particularly the ones on the left. And when you point it out to them, they really have the old KS that they like to shame, insult, guilt, and they have a need to be right. And the reason why they have a need to be right and they go round and round, just like a number of ABWs do, is because they cannot counteract what you're saying. And what they'll do, they will come up with a straw man argument. This is what people with schizophrenia do. I just told you about it earlier. And in the end, brother, this is why we got the problems, particularly in the black community. And there are a number of black people who need mental health. What say you, brother?
Indeed, man. It's crazy. When I first came to this space and started talking on panels, I would tell the brothers behind the scenes, I said, man, you got to watch out for these guys on the left. Not all of them, but a lot of them are mentally ill, dog. I'm just being honest, man. I don't know. Right. I don't know, schizophrenia is obviously a mental illness. I'm not saying AC Star is that. I don't know enough about it. But I know they absolutely will deny reality. These are the same people that will tell you that a man can be a woman. But if I show them the document, it says H&R Block says, Americans got $1,200 from Trump's tax cut on average. No, that's fake. That's not real, blah, blah, blah. I mean, leftist men they're the most disgusting people. And this is just my opinion.
Go ahead.
They are the most disgusting people you can imagine. It's one thing for a woman to be a leftist. There's actual benefit. Ultimately, it's not benefit. It's to their detriment. But there's short-term benefit getting their hands on welfare and, being put in these positions of power and, girl power. And you can march down the street with your pussy hat on and all the other dumb nonsense. But of course, long-term, they suffer because nobody wants them. They're miserable. They're alone. But what reason is there for a man to be aligning himself with this shit ever? I understand we're conditioned as black men in particular to be Democrats. We follow just whatever we're taught in the house. But man, once you're an adult and you see the difference, I've told the story before. When I came to this space, I asked Xavier and Ramil the same question. I said, do you know any black conservatives or black Republicans? They both said, yeah. This is 2 different times on each of their panels. Right. They both said, yeah. I said, how many broke, unemployed, loser, black conservative or Democrat men do you know? Both of them laughed. They said, none. All them dudes got something popping. That's what Ramil said. Brother Xavier said, nah, man, there's like 5 of them I know. They all do business with my business. And then I asked him, I said, well, do you know any Democrat, liberal guys? Oh, yeah, I know plenty of those. I said, do you know any broke, loser, unemployed, in between jobs, leftist or Democrat men? Yeah, man, yeah, I do. I said, not all, and I know I just contradicted myself, not all of them are losers, but almost all losers are leftists. You see what I'm saying?
I see what you're saying.
Yeah, okay, so... yeah, the mental illness part, I've been accused of having the Napoleon complex. Can you say exactly what that is? Because I'm a short guy,
Well, the Urban Dictionary and other medical, let's just stick with the Urban Dictionary. Because I'm pretty sure I'm 5'8". They call it a short man's syndrome.
Complex.
Short men have a complex, and what they do, they overcompensate themselves they can be very violent. Also, what they do, they want to overcompensate themselves to make themselves feel taller. They may wear taller shoes. They may come out with crazy outbursts
or lie about their height.
They will lie about their height, and they will have big egos. Why? Because they want to feel taller. And I see a lot of this in the workplace.
Okay.
Well, because you have some bosses And I put that out there because you play a lot of Kendra G videos, and the number, particularly that the black woman wants on Kendra G's show, is 6 feet. Now, you can be 6 feet, and I put it out there. Doesn't mean you can fight. Mike Tyson is not all that tall, but
5'10", I believe.
he put a number of people on that campus back in his day, on that canvas.
Yeah.
I mean, he knocked out Larry Holmes, his first heavyweight fight. But basically, individuals with Napoleon Syndrome, they're said to have an inferiority complex. Well, I'm going to tell you this. You know who has an inferiority complex, brother? Some of us blacks have an inferiority complex. Some of us blacks have an inferiority complex. Well, some of us do. And it goes deeper than that. It goes into defeatism. See, one thing that, all right, when we talk about politics, and shout out to brother Nick Taylor, he did a good job on that show as well. Now, what I'm going to say is this. The reason why a number of us have the defeatist attitude is, number one, some of us do give up. But some of us are comfortable with the defeatist attitude because we're thinking that someone is going to save us. Now, again, not shifting off the topic, talk about reparations. One thing I will say about that is, and this is my take on it, let's say if we got reparations, right? A number of black people will do with that reparations? They're going to put it right back into the white community. They're going to take it to Walmart. They're going to buy cars with it. You think they're going to build businesses with that kind of money? Depending on what it is. That's what I'm saying. Salute to Samantha P. You and Nate do not present are yourselves similar. 4-1 had a light disposition, and Nate more so on an angry one. I can understand why people would say that. Wow. Okay. I think it's less so about the height and more about each person present. Okay. Now, Samantha P., why do you think Brother Nate has a angry disposition? Answer that question for me. Now, Brother Nate, you can address that. She's saying that you have an angry, you could have an angry disposition. Is it angry, or is it how you speak to your audience to get their attention? Because a pastor, when you go to church, a pastor may yell to get the audience riled up, to keep them attentive. What say you, brother?
Well, honestly, I think she's attempting to take a shot at me. She's got an issue with me, to be honest with you. And she can think whatever she wants. If she doesn't like the angry disposition, she can simply not listen to my channel, and then it's no problem. That's all.
Oh, that's that. Well, yeah, that does.
That solves all that.
Well, this is why I bring out the issues the way I do, because there are a number of people. Okay, when it comes to these channels, some people. I'm not saying Samantha P. is that person. It's some people may love you in the back. They may hate you on the outside, but they love you in the back. That's why they keep coming. Now, Samantha P. also says how each person presents his voice inflection. Nah, it's past passion. Okay. But everybody, I mean, you've had people, all right. Look at brother, what's his name? AC. He was on today. Look at him. He put out some facts, and what did he do? I've seen him on Reggie's show call names. Or he told Sir Tyson, Sir Tyson's a good brother, told Sir Tyson he didn't know what he was talking about. And Sir Tyson's pretty well adapted in politics as well.
Absolutely. If you disagree with him, you don't know what you're talking about.
Well, I know.
These guys see the influence we're having on the space, and it breaks their heart. It literally breaks their heart, because just a few years ago, everything was about white supremacy and the white man. And, if a guy gets shot by police while doing criminal shit, everybody gets to have a panel about how horrible the police are and when are we going to go to war. And now there are more rational thinkers who are really shining the light on the actual problem. So they're upset now because, things aren't going the way they want. So.
Yeah. That's the next question I have. Is it the fact that, okay, we're getting a little bit more information based on what we're reading? We're not going out there looking at the news anymore. Is it that because for the most part, you have a number of individuals, yes, you can be passionate, but when you read something, can you connect what you're reading to what's really going on? And a number of people can't do that. And sometimes, like Tyler Perry, I've seen some Tyler Perry movies, and I don't live in that Tyler Perry world, but some ABWs live in that Tyler Perry world. And living in that world, I'm not saying that they're schizophrenic, but TV does cause a lot of deception and perception with reality. So also, Samantha P., firstly, I don't, but secondly, not even, Nate, even. If anything, I worry about your cortisol levels and worry about you giving yourself a heart attack. I don't hate you, Nate. Okay. And
no, I hear.
She says, I disagree with how you speak about white people like parasites. That's what I mean. He took it all the way to she has a problem with me.
How I talk about, but these are the same women that have no problem listening to Black women being ridiculed almost all day long for their terrible behavior. But I can't talk about white folks. You're crazy. You're crazy.
In this space, we will talk about the issues no matter where it comes from. And one thing, we've been on a lot of these panels. And shout out, I'm supposed to be Brother Nate, supposed to be on the Prophet of Thought tomorrow.
You want to be on tomorrow?
Tomorrow, not debate. So he's probably going to have some other people up, and I'm hoping you're up there because you're gonna, you know how Teapot is. I've known Teapot a long time, so not 9:15 tomorrow. That's what we're talking about because I talked to him, but basically, in this space, do you think some people in this space have Stockholm syndrome? You know what I mean by Stockholm syndrome? They always
you begin to take the side of your abductor and see things from their perspective. Yeah,
right.
Stockholm syndrome.
Yeah. Do you have
the white liberal? The white liberal's been our enemy since time immemorial in this country. I mean, the people that burned down Black Wall Street and all and committed acts of violence, I can guarantee you if they voted Democrat. So if you're committed to leftist ideology and policies, that to me is a form of Stockholm syndrome. These, the same white people that are Democrats cheered when we died being lynched and hung. They cheer when Black women kill their children and when they kill their children. They're just terrible people, period. These are the same people that cheer for death. That's what they cheer for. They love it. So it is a form of Stockholm syndrome to be committed to the Democrat Party, and I don't tell black men to commit themselves to the Republicans, my
Now,
ideology is that of a conservative. That's what I'm committed to.
while I have you on, there was another guy up there, and he called himself Echo the I forgot. And
Yeah, the brother with the black and white checkered shirt on. Yeah.
right now, he has a channel. He has a channel, and he's claiming that okay, he's trying to be fair and balanced. Now, uh, when he started talking to me, he was giving off liberal talking points.
You know what I noticed, Leon? These guys, because we're in the space now and conservative, and guys are so effective at tearing apart liberal ideology, they can no longer commit themselves to the Democrat Party. So they have to say, well, Democrats are bad. I'm not really with the Democrats, but I can't be with the Republicans. No one's telling you to be with the Republicans. Why don't you look at each party's platform every 4 years and see which policies and things they want to do most line up with your belief system? And if you're in this space and you're a quote thinking black man, and you're free thinking and you believe in patriarchy and traditional values, how in the world are you voting with the Democrats? If you don't want to vote with the Republicans, that's fine. It's fine. Don't vote for them. But of the two parties, only one's platform comes anywhere near the things we talk about in this space.
That is true. That is true. And I completely agree with that. That's their manipulative way of trying to get on a bunch of people sides and win over will inevitably is other leftists. Well, I've always seen leftists as very delusional people. And everything that they use is based on emotion. And when you ask questions, and this is there was a guy, I don't know if he's on anymore. I used to listen to a lot of talk radio. You may have heard of this guy named Michael Savage.
Oh yeah, I know Mike. Yeah, he's on.
He's still on. So you know who I'm talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. Short. Doesn't he have the goatee?
Yeah, he's from Brooklyn.
Salt and pepper goatee. Yeah,
He's
I know
from
Michael.
Brooklyn. Well,
Yeah.
Michael Savage came up with this label. Liberalism is a mental disorder.
Oh, you did? Good. Dude.
Well, but if you listen to a number of them talk, and all the Kendra G videos that you put up, and I put up one last night on, and thank you for responding to that on, and I thank Tommy Jean, she gave me the idea to do that one. So I did that one, and you find that when it comes to the child support issue, how women don't want to pay child support either. This woman was bragging that she made a whole lot of money. Like she was boss.
You know what I think it is? Men, and I've talked to Sir, I'm part of a Facebook group of single fathers.
Okay.
And you would not believe how many men just don't even pursue it. Same thing with me. I threatened her a couple of times. Hey, if you don't pay, I'm going to be taking you to court. I never did it because, first of all, I don't want the government involved. I don't want to be going into the courts. I have absolutely no desire to do that shit. Now, should I have done it? In retrospect, I probably should have. Go ahead and put that pressure on her to actually pay. But I'm also fine with it the way it is. My children grew up incredibly well, and everything's good with them. So,
But I did answer your comment. If it had been you, you know what they would have done?
Oh yeah, I'd be in jail, of course.
Taking away your license. It would have been put on your credit report. They may have shut down your bank account, put you on work release. And even if you left your job, you had an unemployment check, they would garnish. Because I'm telling you all this because that's what happened to me.
Oh,
okay. I was without a job. I was getting unemployment, and brother, I was getting $10 checks. Yeah. had to file bankruptcy.
You got behind on it, or what happened?
Oh, you get when you're out of a job, you get behind, and unemployment really doesn't make it up.
Oh no,
Sometimes you do.
no.
And see, then I didn't know about the system like I do now. I mean, I even had my bank account frozen a couple of times.
God
Yes.
damn.
This is what happens when the Welfare to Work Act of 1996 came into play.
Was getting custody of them an option for you, or just wasn't feasible?
Wasn't feasible.
Gotcha.
It wasn't feasible at all.
Gotcha.
You know, with the systems out here and the people making the systems. Now, I'm not talking about let me clarify myself so I don't sound like I'm contradicting myself. I'm talking about the behaviors of the people who come up with these plans. What are they really thinking? I mean, you know, whatchamacallit, shout out to brother Nick Taylor. He mentioned a lot of the cities that were run by black people. Okay, and then right around Atlanta, Fulton County, the whole criminal justice system is run by black women. I would always ask myself, if you get in trouble, that black woman is going to revert back to one of her relationships and lock you up. Is she going to look at the case properly? You have to understand these people are human, and these people have some terrible thoughts. And these mayors, these cities, this is why the cities that are blue, and I would say if my state became a blue state, I'm out.
Man, dude, speaking of Charlotte, you know, for 2023, you know, the Dems took over Charlotte, man, and they have fucked it up royally, dog.
Now, I've never been to Charlotte. That's where X lives down there.
Yes, X lives in Charlotte. Yeah, I live about 20 minutes from it.
And Theo is supposed to be going to Charlotte.
Yes, he's moving to Charlotte. Yes, sir.
So that town, now I did hear that place, I didn't know it was run by down by Democrats or so.
Yes, man. When I first got here, dude, it was beautiful, and most of the city still is, but the center city is hold on, yeah, she Lyles, I think, is the mayor. She's a Democrat.
Okay.
Oh, she's fucking terrible, dude. When 2 years ago, my son and I went to Charlotte for dinner. I hadn't been to Charlotte in maybe 3 years. So a couple of years ago, we went to a place called Tupelo Honey. It's right in the center city.
Okay.
Parked at a parking garage. You know, we're walking to the restaurant. There's always been a homeless problem, but the homeless people would sit in the bus terminals and stuff. There were homeless people stretched out on the ground like it was a bed. And the worst fucking thing, the goddamn Hebrew Israelites are in the middle of the city screaming from their megaphone, you know, white supremacy and racism, and the goddamn sound bounces off the buildings. It literally, we're sitting there like, these motherfuckers, when did these motherfuckers start doing this shit in the middle of Center City, Charlotte? You know, the dudes are out there with their megaphones talking about racism. I'm like, oh my God, this is fucking ridiculous. What the hell has happened to the city? And check this out. This is the funniest part. We're sitting in Tupelo Honey, right?
Right.
Eating dinner. Guess who comes in and asks the waitresses for some free water?
The Hebrew Israelites.
Yes. Oh. Asking the dreaded white man for some fucking water. Just ridiculous, man. Just completely fucking ridiculous, dude. Yeah, it's what happens when Democrats take over shit, man. It's just horrible.
Well, I just see a lot of behavior in this country, and you know, the thing about the manosphere is there's different sectors. Like I said, my niche is talking about the behavior, because without the behavior, it's very hard to really decipher people. So that's why I came up, and you know, some people have borderline personality disorders as well. BPD, and which are almost like Jekyll and Hyde. You just don't know what they're thinking, how they're thinking, and as you know, as a man, I will say this: we have to be independent thinkers. We have to continue to be independent thinkers. Like I said, I'm not as I know my politics, not as skilled with debating it like you are, but I just look at it from a common sense standpoint. I don't believe that we need government to solve our problems. I like to solve my own problems. The problem
Same
we,
government you're supposed to go to war with, supposed to solve your problems. Really?
yeah,
Ridiculous, man. It's
I,
ridiculous.
I, I'm, I see a lot of dependency, and it's not just on our side. It's just a number of people in this country. They're too dependent, and I know when we talk about the numbers of jobs out here, okay, you have to be aware too when they say, well, we have an unemployment rate of this number. Remember, the numbers may seem a little bit inflated because there weren't people in those jobs anyway, because after the Rona hit, people stopped working. So it left a lot of open jobs. That's why the wages are higher. Now that the wages are higher, people aren't willing to fill those jobs. They're not.
Crazy.
So it's going to
And we're
cause.
supposed to feel sorry for them. Women who were paying $50, $70 in rent didn't pay their rent, their Section 8 rent. And now they're about to be evicted. We're supposed to feel sorry for somebody who was in a $900 a month apartment and wouldn't pay $70 for it. Man, fuck that shit. I don't feel sorry for none of them. None
Wow.
of them.
All right. Yep. And the allow it to get worse. It goes open drug use, defecating in the streets, exposing yourself, public intimacy. California will show you how much worse they can get. Thank God I don't live in California.
Never. I'm not living in no blue state ever again.
No,
I'll be honest with you. Part of me wants to move to Colorado, but it's
it's blue.
purple and it goes
Colorado?
blue. Yeah, part of me wants to move to Colorado.
Why
Hold
would
on a
you want to
sec.
go out? Why would you want to go out to Colorado?
Hold on a sec. Hold on a sec.
I'm talking too much.
Yeah. Yeah. Just don't forget Walgreens. All right. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry, man.
Colorado. Now it's a nice place to visit. There is you got to watch her channel called Denver Nights. Look up that channel. Her name is Karen.
Denver Knights. Okay.
Denver Nights. Her name
What
is
don't you like about it? What don't you like about it?
the way it's run now. It's going more into Democratic control.
It is, yeah. I know. I know. There's a
And
really good gym there my boy wants to be a part of. Several of the top US UFC guys fight there. Dillashaw, several other guys fight there, and he wants to see if he can get in that gym. That's one of the main reasons. But we'll see. It's either that or Texas. I was thinking about going to, but there's no
I
rush
would
there.
probably stay where you are in South Carolina.
You think so? I got you.
Yeah, I would, because you're not going to get too much more red than
No, yeah. South Carolina ain't going nowhere as far as
now
not voting Republican.
North Carolina. I'm always iffy about North Carolina.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Because a lot more people are moving down from the Northeast down to North Carolina.
Like with Virginia, Northern Virginia is DC, and that's why
Now,
it flipped.
yeah. Because it used to be Virginia, and I lived in Virginia. I lived in the Hampton Roads area where Trey lived. Portsmouth in that area, because it's military, that part was blue. But when you go by 95 and you go past Fredericksburg, now you're getting into actually it was red. Now you're getting into the blue area because now here's the reason why though. When you look at DC, you want to know the biggest employer in DMV? It's the government.
Government, yeah, of course.
It's the government. And going back to California in the last 2 months, we've had some panhandlers starting to come around where there is more jobs available than ever in history. I went down and put signs, stop incentivizing the panhandlers. This is what's happening in California.
I saw a video of children getting off the school bus, and somebody took a video of what they have to walk past. I mean, just a series of tents next to a building with people, open air drug market, people shooting up, prostitution. I mean, these are little children. These are like 12-year-old children walking down the street past this filth and degeneracy, dude. Never, man.
Now, got this. Colorado used to be nice, but it's gotten really insidious recently. And his blue is my state is we don't have a bad homeless problem. Now, that's Samantha P. She's talking about Colorado. It's gotten bad. You might want to.
Yeah, I would visit it first. I would visit it.
Listen, if you're going to go to any state, I'd go and visit it. It's been like 2 months, and I've seen less than a handful of different panhandlers downtown. And she says Colorado was on my list too, but it's really changed over the last 5 to 6 years since I looked into it. If you're going to do that, it's just like Tennessee. Now, I'm not crazy about Memphis. Let's say if I had to go to Tennessee, it would be around Knoxville, in that area. It would be.
Oh yeah, you don't want no parts of Memphis, though.
Yeah, the cousin pastor lives there. I heard all about.
You don't want no parts of Memphis, dude.
No, and you live there, but
yeah, I lived there for like 3 years. Ugh.
And no when I see this country and the tent cities, and I've been over in some of these areas when I was in the Middle East in the military, and some of these tent cities here looks like third world. And yes, the Carolinas are good. I would definitely move to the Carolinas over Texas any day. I lived down there in Irving, Texas. Now, this is way back in 1994, though.
Oh, wow.
It's changed now. It wasn't as populated right around Big D.
All the California folks moving to Texas. That's the problem, probably.
And Arizona. And that's the big problem. And here's another thing, too. The California folks will move out of California because of what's going on in California, but they'll bring the problems that they left.
Yeah, that same stupid liberalism, they'll bring it to Austin. The hell is wrong with you?
Samantha P. says, I don't live in California. I live in Connecticut. Connecticut is a blue state, too. I've been to Greenwich. I've been to Bridgeport. Hartford. Oh, Hartford is... Brother Nate, I don't know if you've been to Connecticut. Hartford, no, sir. Horrible.
Really? And it's, well, you don't mind the cold. I know Connecticut's cold as hell, too. No, thank you.
Well, yeah. Danbury was okay. Waterbury,
probably expensive as shit, too, ain't it?
Greenwich is expensive, yes. Right off, come up out of New York on I-95, yes. And then Celine lives in Massachusetts. That's another blue state.
I thought Celine lived in Florida.
She visited Florida. She lives in Massachusetts.
Oh, okay. Oh my God, Massachusetts. Ugh.
Well, my mom still lives in Maryland. Maryland
just, they vote Republican governors, but they're garbage.
They're rhinos.
Yeah, they're rhinos.
Well, now the only one that wasn't was my Congressman Bob Ehrlich, but he only lasted for 4 years. In fact, Hogan is the third Republican governor Maryland has had since 1966. So
Wow, very, very rarely.
Maryland goes blue. Now, it goes blue because of two areas.
Baltimore?
But right around Baltimore, Prince George's County, and Montgomery County. But
Montgomery,
if you go to
okay.
the rest of Maryland, like, well, Howard County is pretty good. Frederick County is getting better. Um, you go all the way out to the Panhandle and the mountains, that's better. You go to the Eastern Shore, Maryland, that's good. That's good. It's Central Maryland, Harford County, Baltimore County, uh, Anne Arundel County. Yeah, Anne Arundel. I used to live in Anne Arundel County, but PG and Montgomery County are the worst. And Celine says, my brother lives in Florida, down in Orlando. It's a nice area, but she's in Massachusetts.
Gotcha, gotcha. You
And
know, did
yes,
you
sir.
hear the mayor of Portland is begging residents not to leave? So many people are now leaving Portland because you can buy crack out of a dispensary. You can buy crack out of a vending machine in Portland now.
Now, I believe that mayor of Portland, she used to be part of the BLM movement or something.
Oh yes, very. They I think the police chief left, and just a complete fucking nightmare. They're begging people in Portland to stay, begging them, please don't leave. Things are gonna get better. Fuck
No,
them.
losing
Fuck
money.
them.
Samantha
Leave. Get out of there.
Samantha P says, though Connecticut is blue, we don't have a bad homeless problem. Maybe some stragglers in cities, but they never rarely set up tents or lay in the public. Yeah, a lot of people in Connecticut, some of them come up from New York. Hartford is such a small part of the state, though, but it's one of the most dangerous cities in the entire country. I see gang violence there, but most of it is farmland, backwoods, upper middle class houses, and just like I told you, Greenwich has high housing costs but low taxes. And I like West Hartford where the Cheesecake Factory is. It's the New England states, even Maine, is expensive. Even Maine. Okay.
Check this
And
out. Check it. I'm reading this. I pulled it up on Google. Mayor Ted Wheeler. It's a guy that runs it. Little
Ted
pencil neck
Wheeler.
geek. Yeah, Ted Wheeler. Mayor Ted Wheeler pleads with Portlanders not to give up. I love it. I absolutely don't give up. You make your city, your beautiful metropolitan city, a haven for criminals, homeless, drug addicts. Work with me, Mayor Ted Wheeler pleads with Portlanders to not give up on the city. Fuck them. Get out of
Nope.
there, man.
Nope. Stay off the coast. It's New England apple picking type areas. Hartford is a crap hole. Cities, you're going to have some nice locations, just like any other city. Crime is bad. Okay, Vermont, New Hampshire, they're beautiful. New Hampshire might be the lowest of it. Vermont. Bernie Sanders is Vermont. I would never go there. No, no. Well, a lot of people, they don't even know who their own congressional,
Congressmen, yeah,
yeah,
senators.
they
Yeah.
don't know who their senators are. They don't know their government. They don't know. And one of the reasons why I don't talk a lot about politics is because for us, many of us, we really don't understand politics at all. And yet Deshaun says, Deshaun lives out in California. Here we go.
Oh my God.
It's
God
bad
bless
here.
you, Deshaun.
Yeah, God bless you. It's bad here in Cali. Homeless cesspool everywhere. And Samantha P says Maine's areas you'd want to live in are expensive, but there are amazing taxes in Maine. Tons of freedom and more country areas can be affordable with super low crime. And yeah, I've been to Maine. Yeah, you got some elk running up there, but it's cold as heck up in Maine.
Yeah, I can't deal with that cold, man.
The cold isn't bad. Like here, you got a lot of Chicago brothers, hardcore Tito, Jap, uh, Black Ram. Bernard Riley lives up here. Anton. Yeah, if you ever heard of
Y'all
Anton.
got 6 months of terrible weather, though, dog. Oh.
Well, you know, it's okay to let that man. You know, I'm going to say this, and I'm going to sound biased. In the Midwest, I believe Indiana is probably one of the best states to live in.
Think so? Gotcha.
Well, because it's now the only thing I have a problem with it when they passed that Roe versus Wade. Ohio outlawed abortions, but here they can have abortions up to 22 months that are coming over here.
Whoa, in Indiana?
Yeah.
Well, isn't your governor Republican?
Yeah, he's about out of there. Eric Holcomb. Yeah, he's about out of here. He's done his 2 terms.
Wow.
Yeah. Celine, I saw George H.W. Bush down in Maine at a restaurant with his Secret Service back when I was 13. Abandoned North Jersey. I used to go to school in North Jersey. In 2022, a vote for the Democratic Party is a death rehearsal by CN.
Is it abandoned North Jersey?
They're probably talking
The
about
name is
like
hilarious.
New York, Patterson, Elizabeth, Orange. Oh yeah, oh
Dude,
yeah.
the taxes alone in a state like New Jersey are absolutely horrific.
They
I don't know
are.
how anybody lives in these places. They are terrible.
New Jersey
Absolutely
has
fucking
some of the.
terrible, man.
You
No,
know, AC lives in New Jersey.
I bet he does.
He's in Trenton, a crap hole. Trenton's the
Oh,
capital of New Jersey.
gross.
Yeah,
No, thank you.
he's from New York. I've heard him, and oh yeah, it's cold like almost 9 months a year, but it's crisp and pristine. The people are very nice, but a lot of them have drinking problems and solitary issues because of snow. That's probably living up in Maine, and yep, they have a high suicide rate. And tons of presidents go up to Maine, like Bumport, Maine. That's where Obama used to go. And I pay 12 grand per year. And
Oh my
taxes,
God.
and taxes,
Get the fuck out of here, man. Hell no.
that
I
is
had a when I went to St. John's University in New York,
that's a private school too.
yeah. I only went for 1 year. But the Jamaica Queens campus, my economics professor lived on Long Island. This is 1992. He talked about his taxes on Long Island. He was paying $1,200 a month in 1992 for property taxes.
Jesus Christ. So that's
Dude,
$400 a year in
yes,
92?
$1,200 a month in property taxes living on Long Island.
You think that's probably
Hell
doubled
no.
or tripled by now?
Probably, dude. It's insane. The taxes, your car insurance, everything is fucking astronomical, dude. No.
Yep. Abandoned North Jersey said, yep, he pays $12,000 a year. And the mill rate is 38.6. And Celine says Kennebum Point, Ungunquit, and Wells are absolutely beautiful. Absolutely beautiful if you got the money to stay there. Those are most likely places of tourism. Deshaun says, Jesus Christ, $1,200 per month on property taxes. He must live in a high-end penthouse or something.
Long Island is insane. It's just one of the most insane places in the world to live, man.
Well,
It's so ridiculously expensive.
Well, I think the further east you go, like to the Hamptons out there. Now, I had an aunt that lived in Babylon, Long Island, and what is it? What counties are in Long Island? What is it? Sussex County?
I got to be honest, I'm not exactly sure.
Yeah, but yeah, that's expensive, and the problem is you got to go to states that you can survive.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, dude, South Carolina is awesome. Granted, we don't have a lot of the attractions, of course, that a major, state like, New York has, but dude, that's fine. You can always travel. Your day-to-day life is what you need to be most concerned about.
you know.
Well, absolutely. And like I said, here, I'm not too far from Chicago or St.
Yeah,
Louis.
you can go visit a major city.
I
Absolutely.
go visit.
Yeah, is Indianapolis nice?
Indianapolis I'm gonna tell you, India is very funny. Indianapolis is probably it's purple.
Gotcha.
Uh, they're building it up. They're building it up, but like Angry Snowman said, he used to live down there. It's run good, but it's funny. It's one of these cities that it's still predominantly white. Yeah, they have their crime rate, but you can still afford to live there depending on what side of the city you go on. But they have Fishers and Noblesville. The problem with Indianapolis, they're building it up. I mean, I'm seeing a ton of cranes every time I go downtown. And the problem I have with that is when it comes to the suburbs, who moves into the suburbs? Your liberals. They move into the suburbs.
Suburban moms, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, I mean, like you live not too far from Charlotte. I think in Greenville. What are you out in Greenville, Spartanburg, out in that area?
I'm about 2 hours from Greenville, about an hour and a half from Spartanburg.
Oh, okay. You're right off of 77 or 85.
77.
Okay. Oh, okay. But no, if I were you, I would stay in South Carolina. You're not going to get any better. And Samantha P says, I was looking into Florida and everything was looking good, but the rent prices have skyrocketed in the last couple of years. Everything is so far apart. Tons of drug addicts. And it's either bougie or ghetto, nothing in between. And that's the problem. Now, you also have to look at your state's economy. See, here in Indiana, we have three economies here. They still make steel here, even though it's specialty steel. They still make transmissions here. They still make some type of engines here because we have Rolls Royce here. And then we have professional jobs. And then there's a lot of blue collar jobs like construction going on here. That's what makes this place attractive. And that's what I look at. And you still have agriculture here. So all the cities are spread out. Indianapolis is the center, it's the capital, just like Columbia is the capital of South Carolina. So we have a good interstate road system that connects Indianapolis. Yes, can we get some snow here? Absolutely. I mean, winters haven't really been as brutal here, except for I believe it was 2019. We had 4 days in a row where we were exceedingly cold. We had 25 below 2 days in a row and 10 below, and I couldn't start my car back in 19. But it does get cold, and we get snow here, but it's not bad. And going back to the politics, I believe there are a number of politicians that have mental disorders, in my opinion. They've been grifting all their lives and they don't understand the real world. And many of them, they've been in there too long, regardless if they've been on the left and on the right. But before I continue, let me get to the poll question. 12 votes. Do today's American citizens have mental issues? Well, out of 12 votes, 100% yes, 0 no. And Samantha P, my husband can work. It's almost 100% where my husband can work is of the utmost importance. And that's right. Now, a big industry that's here is down in Indianapolis is the hospitality industry. If you like cooking, and then you got Chicago.
Love it. I'm doing right now.
We'll do it right now.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's that's another thing too. And we can get in our open panel session, cooking. I see a number of men who like to cook. I see a number of men who do.
And we have to, because these women, a lot of them don't. We have to.
I mean, we're cooking more than just ramen noodles at Nate.
Oh no, no, we eat well. We eat very well. Yes. Yes,
I mean, I mean, yeah, I mean, I still, like I said, I messed up something. I still have to cook a pizza. That pizza I made, I got to work on that a little bit better. Well, it was too doughy, but
Gotcha.
well,
Did you par cook the crust?
man, you know what? I put too much crust in it.
Gotcha. You got
And
a lot of people par cook the crust. You cook it a little first, then you go and put your toppings and completely cook
yeah,
it.
and I didn't roll it out good, but
Gotcha.
I and this is part of the open panel. I think cooking is a necessity that everybody needs because there are a number of us who constantly go out to eat. The problem with that is when you go out to eat, you don't know what's happening to your food out there, the prices, even getting food delivered to your house, that's gone up. I mean, if you order from DoorDash, you get your food, then you're charged taxes, then you put a tip in there, and then there's money that you have to pay for the driver coming out here, and that could add up to be a sizable bill using DoorDash. People don't look at that. And then the price of gas. You have a number of people who say, well, gas is going down. No, gas is still up there. Gas is not $2 a gallon like we had 2 years ago. Okay. Gas is still up right around here. It's dropped down here about 375. That's the lowest, but it's still up there. And gas takes a consumable amount of money. I find cooking rather soothing. Plus, you can be creative and make it with your own little art piece. Pizza takes at least 4 to 5 times to perfect. That's true. That's true. I haven't made it in a while, but I might hop back up there. But the best thing that I can do is, continue to work on it. But like I said, going over that stream you guys had. I'm going to watch some more of that. That was a very interesting stream, and I like that Nick Taylor. Uh, and then when I heard your voice up there, I said, "Uh-oh."
Yeah, I had to go up there and help brother Nick, man. I didn't like him. These leftist dudes coming up there with their nonsense, man. I just wanted to go up there and help him.
Well, like I said, I've seen AC Star. He's on. And he's going to go back to Reg's panel. And I don't,
What does he do there? Like, I mean, does he?
Same thing. Reg's same thing. Yells.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. Yells and screams. Well, the problem, I heard him mention geopolitics. I really don't care about geopolitics. I care about what happens here. We need to be energy independent, not have.
We were just about there until, we got rid of the Keystone and
fracking.
Yeah, got rid of fracking, and now gas. I know it's dropped a little, but it's a disaster. And hopefully, the American people have learned their lesson about this party, man.
Well, the Sean is telling us right now, gas prices are starting to creep up. Where he is, the gas I use is $5.74 a gallon.
Dude, that's Cali, baby.
He's in California. Deshaun, you might have to pack up. Come to South Carolina, or if you can deal with a little bit of cold, come to Indiana. I mean,
if you're not having to go into an office, if you telecommute, man, there is no reason to live it. I understand people got family and stuff, man, but dude, your quality of life and the money you make, especially as a resident of California, whatever you're making, it will go twice as far down south And I'm sure Leon can speak to Indiana.
But don't go to Alabama or Mississippi or Louisiana though, unless you're going down to. You got to. They're poor down there too, especially Jackson, Mississippi. I heard all about that, the water and everything. By the way, a black mayor, I believe, is running that city. Just like Flint. We've had opportunities and we just run them into the ground. Samantha P., we were just about there. Only we were 100% independent. We were also selling energy to other countries. We had so much reserve that we thought about dumping it in the oceans. Well, thank God we didn't. But one of the reasons why gas prices came down here is because the reserves were tapped, but they were only tapped for a little bit. And now look at us. I mean, when we depend on OPEC, that's something we've always done. That has put us into basically a position that we don't need to be in. And then you have, I think in California, they want to get rid of gas cars by 2035. Remember, electric car can only get you but so far. Electric car can only get you, I don't know, maybe 300 miles, 400 miles. And electric cars are very expensive to fix as well. Samantha P says it was one of the first times in history or first time in ... amount of time. Well, what what we need to learn about, Brother Nate? We need to learn about, a lot of us need to learn more about some economics. Okay.
Yeah, and also we need to reform our idea about what a business is. You don't want to start a business that only caters to black people, unless you're Bob Johnson. Oh, we need black business. I mean, we need men who are black that own businesses, sure, but you need to go get everybody's money. Everybody.
That is,
it's a problem, dude.
That is a fact. And one thing we have to get rid of is the consumerist attitude. We get some money, we always want to go out and buy materials, big cars, houses. Shout out to Deshaun. He says Cali wants to ban the sale of gas cars by 2035. Using gas car in general is still in debate. 2035. So that's only 13 years away.
Dodge got rid of its most popular vehicle, the Challenger and the Charger, with the naturally aspirated V8. And it's going to be fucking electric. Ridiculous, man.
I mean, with all this gas out here, electric is expensive. I don't even like cooking on an electric stove.
No, I always use gas. You know how much a battery in one of those cars costs?
Woo.
Bruh, I had a person, I went and did a claim. They said that their vehicle, they were in another state and the vehicle flooded, right? And they had it, quote unquote, towed back home. So I'm looking for evidence of flood, mildew, pull back the carpet as much as I could. No, there was no evidence of flooding. What happened was the battery went dead. And in this car, to replace the battery, you're talking $16,000, $17,000 to replace the battery. Completely out of warranty, this electric car. If you have a 2006 Chevy Tahoe, you can buy a used engine from a salvage yard, insurance auto auction or Coparts. $1,200, $1,300, $1,000 to install it, top off all the fluids. You're rolling for $2,300, $2,400.
Well, yeah, that is very, very true. Now you're talking about that kind of money for a battery. That's insane. And like I said, I don't think electric cars have proven themselves yet. Also, who cares if we move to electricity? It's only 7% of our electricity is made green. Then the electricity being used to charge cars is clearly not. Could have a point there. 93% of all electricity is non-renewable made. So even if you
Really? How about I
change
buy you
cars,
food, stupid?
yeah, even if you change cars over, you wouldn't be making a huge difference. Yeah, that could be true. Now, like I said, I don't know too much about electric cars because I'm not in the car business. I'm a civil engineer by trade. I can tell you though, you're an insurance claim adjuster. How many of those things are you going to have to? What if they get in an accident? how many? How much is insurance going to be on those cars? Has anybody ever thought this stuff out, brother Nate?
Of course not. It's you got that Thornburg lunatic little girl out there screaming at people at the UN to, you're destroying our planet. It's all so fucking fake. They said they needed $100 trillion in carbon taxes. What is $100 trillion in carbon taxes going to do to improve the environment? It's just going to make a bunch of people, stinking elites, wealthy. That's all this shit is about.
Well, if you really look at it, over the past 2 years, because of what happened with the Rona, even pharmaceuticals have gotten rich. See, what I look at in this country is you have a bunch of people in power who have extremely big egos. They're extremely arrogant. They think they're much better than the rest of us are. So they really want a proletarian type of society where we are the peasants and they're the rulers. The the problem that's going on, and this is where you have to look at economics. Does it really trickle down? No, and I understand capitalism because what people need to know is capitalism isn't going to make everybody rich. You have to understand how to navigate yourself through capitalism. So you have to understand investment, you have to understand the tax laws. This is where you can get money. You have to understand credit and interest, yeah, the transfer of wealth. This is what people don't understand. Most of us who are black, we only understand cash. We don't understand investing. We don't understand tax deductions. We don't. We don't. And that's true what I just said. Not everyone gets rich in capitalism, but the bottom floor absolutely moves up.
Hey,
And
brother Leon.
yes, sir.
We about to sit down and do the damn thing here, bro.
All right. Well, hey, brother Nate, what are you going to be having tomorrow on your show?
We're going to talk about this PBN rock murder and the toxic characteristics of black culture.
All right. Be there tomorrow. Everybody, like, share, and subscribe to Little Big Nate's channel. Anybody who has a wrench who's still in my chat, spam Nate's channel. Or Nate, you can spam your own channel. You got a wrench. Put your channel in my chat. Get over there to his channel. He's on Tuesday.
About 7 tomorrow, probably.
Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday. Sometimes he streams on Friday. So everybody get over there to his chat and shout out to Little Big Nate. Thank you for coming on our show. You did a good job of Bernard Riley's, and we're going to watch that. And you enjoy that meal, and I'll be over there tomorrow on your panel.
All right, brother. Salute.
To be in your chat. Salute, my brother.
Thank you.
But again, we're going to keep the ship rolling on here. So, like I said, we have talked about the Napoleon Syndrome. Thank you, Samantha P. Shout out to Little Big Nate. His channel is in the chat. We've also talked about the Napoleon Syndrome. Now, I'm going to go back and dig up schizophrenia again. And I'm going to talk about finish talking about that so we all have an idea of what it is. And the thing about schizophrenia, all right, here's what I had up before. So I'm going to go back and again, I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to go back to schizophrenia again. And thank you. Thank you for staying in the chat. Schizophrenia. Now where I left off, I'm going to go back. Let me go back a little further. I've already talked about the negative, the cognitive symptoms, and of course, the disorganized. What I didn't talk about is what we call ECT. ECT, this is what I got to talk about. ECT is electroconvulsive therapy. And what that is, it's basically a procedure that deals with electrodes that are attached to the person's scalp while they're asleep. They are under anesthesia. And here's how it works. Doctors basically send a small electric shock to the brain. Now, a course of ECT therapy involves 2 to 3 treatments per week for several weeks. So, each shock treatment causes a controlled seizure. So, with that, a series of treatments over time leads to improvement in mood and thinking. Why? Because scientists really don't fully understand how ECT and the controlled seizures causes help. But some researchers think ECT-induced seizures may affect the release of neurotransmitters in the brain. Now, ECT is less well proven to help with schizophrenia than depression or bipolar disorder. So, it isn't used very often when mood symptoms are absent, but it can help when medications no longer work. So, if severe depression or catatonia makes treating it makes depression catatonia or catatonia, it makes treating those issues less difficult. But with everything, there's research that goes into schizophrenia. And researchers are looking at DBS. That's called deep brain stimulation to treat schizophrenia. And this is where doctors surgically implant electrodes that stimulate certain brain areas believed to control thinking and perception. DBS is an established treatment for severe Parkinson's disease and essential tremor, but it is also experimental for the treatment of psychiatric disorders. Shout out to Samantha P. I feel like it's being done under anesthesia. It's even more dangerous. If you're messing something up in there, it's hard for the person to say anything. I'm sure you'll sign away all of your rights. That's a fact. Also, it doesn't really work. We kind of know what happens. It basically kills your drive and makes you just enough of a vegetable to not be a threat of yourself and others, and it makes treating PET diagnosis less difficult. Well, thank you for those good points. Now, here's a question. Are people with schizophrenia dangerous? Well, popular books and movies often depict people with schizophrenia and other mental illnesses as dangerous and violent. This usually isn't true. Most people with schizophrenia are not violent. More typically, they prefer to withdraw and be left alone. When people with mental illness take part in dangerous or violent behaviors, it's generally a result of psychosis and the fear that they're being threatened in some way by their surroundings. Drugs or alcohol can make it worse. On the other hand, people with schizophrenia can be a danger to themselves. So suicide is the top cause of premature death amongst people with schizophrenia. So the outlook of schizophrenia, here it is. If you have the proper treatment, people who have schizophrenia can lead productive and fulfilling lives. Now, that just depends on how severe the condition is, but you also need to stick with the treatment. And once you do that, the people with schizophrenia should be able to live with their families or community settings rather than in a long-term psychiatric hospital. Now, people with prefrontal cortex damage seem like they develop schizophrenia more, and the people with PFC damage do tend to commit crimes and be more physically impulsive. Also, same with TBI, traumatic brain injury, and high impact sports like football. Absolutely. So, dealing with schizophrenia, ongoing research on the brain and how brain disorders happens will also lead to more effective medicines with fewer side effects. And that's the problem with medicines, allergies, side effects. So, can schizophrenia be prevented? Well, there's no way to prevent schizophrenia, but early diagnosis and treatment can help avoid or ease frequent relapses and hospitalizations and help cut the disruption to the person's life, family, and relationship. So overall, when it comes to schizophrenia, it could be hereditary. There's a lot of delusion, hallucinations, forgetfulness. If you manage it right, you can lead a fulfilling life. But you have to be willing to stick with the program. Borderlines have a really high self deletion rate, as well, if I remember correctly, of almost 30%. And for sure, I would consider electrotherapy if I knew that I was in danger to myself and my family. I understand that was a last option scenario. And speaking of borderline personality disorder, I'm gonna go right into that because that's also important. A BPD, borderline personality borderline personality disorder. What is it? I'm going to share my screen and show you what that is right now. All right. Samantha P is on to something when she talked about borderline personality disorder. It is a mental health condition. So people who have BPD, which is borderline personality disorder, have extreme mood swings, unstable relationships, and trouble controlling their emotions. They have a higher risk of suicide and self-destructive behavior. So talk therapy is the main ingredient for BPD. Again, I'm going to review the definition. What is BPD? Borderline personality disorder is a mental health condition marked by extreme mood fluctuations, instability, interpersonal relationships, and impulsivity. In other words, BPD has extreme mood fluctuations and instability when it comes to interpersonal relationships. So generally, people who have BPD basically have fears of abandonment and they cannot regulate their emotions, especially when it comes to anger. And they show behaviors that are very impulsive and dangerous, reckless driving, and they also threaten to harm themselves. Now, when you mix all these up together, these behaviors make it difficult to maintain any type of relationship. So when we have borderline personality disorder, that's in a group of conditions called cluster B personality disorders. And what cluster B disorders are, They're basically erratic and dramatic behaviors. Personality disorders are chronic. When something is chronic, they're long term and they have dysfunctional behavior patterns, and these dysfunctional behavior patterns are, for the most part, inflexible, prevalent, and they lead to social issues and distress. So basically, anyone who is living with borderline personality disorder, they generally don't know if they have it, and they may not even know how to behave and relate to others. In other words, they're going to be very terrible when it comes to having social skills. And when it comes to a healthier way to relate to others, people with BPD don't know. So, what is the difference between borderline personality disorder and bipolar disorder? Now, when we deal with a bipolar disorder, it's characterized by wide fluctuations in moods and behavior, but it's distinct from borderline personality disorder. See, in BPD, mood and behavior change rapidly in response to significant stresses, especially when it comes to interacting with other people. Whereas when you deal with a bipolar disorder, moods are more sustained and less reactive. Again, talking about personality, a BPD, not bipolar, but borderline personality disorder. Best therapy is CBT, cognitive behavior therapy. That's what that is, and DBT. So when we deal with, of course, borderline personality disorder, I'm going to say this. People with borderline personality disorder also have significant changes in energy and activity, unlike those who have BPD. Now, who does borderline personality disorder affect? Well, most personality disorders begin in the teen years when your personality further develops and matures. So, as a result, almost all people diagnosed with borderline personality disorder are basically above the age of 18. So, although anyone can develop BPD, it's more common if you have a family history of BPD. People with other mental health conditions such as anxiety, depression, or eating disorders are also at a higher risk. So, when we get the statistic from people who have been diagnosed with BPD, 75% of the people who have BPD are people assigned female at birth. That is AFAB. Then you also have AMAB, which that's assigned male at birth. And research suggests that a male at birth may equally be affected by BPD, which is borderline personality disorder, but they also may be diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder, known as PTSD or depression. So, how common is borderline personality disorder? Well, approximately 1.4% of the adult population has BPD. So that means borderline personality disorder is pretty rare. And moving on, how common is borderline personality disorder? Again, I've already told you it's really rare. Only 1%, or we can say 1.4% of the adult population has it. But what are the symptoms and causes? Well, signs of borderline personality disorder usually appear again in your late teenage years or early adulthood. So, a troubling event or stressful experience can trigger symptoms or make them worse. So, basically, Over time, symptoms usually decrease and they may go away completely. Symptoms can range, and they will range, from manageable to very severe, and it can include any combination of the following: fear of abandonment. And that word, we've heard that several times. Fear of abandonment. And fear of abandonment is common for people with BPD to feel uncomfortable being alone. When people with BPD feel that they're being abandoned or neglected, they feel intense fear or anger. In fact, they might track their loved ones' whereabouts or stop them from leaving, or they may push people away before getting too close to avoid rejection. When it comes to relationships, they can be very intense but unstable. And this is why people with BPD find it very challenging to keep healthy personal relationships because they tend to change their views of others abruptly and dramatically. They will go from idealizing others to devaluing them quickly and vice versa. So basically, their friendships, marriages, and relationships with family members are often chaotic and unstable. Then you have unstable self image or sense of self. Usually, people who are unclear about who they are with their self image have a distorted or unclear self image, and they often feel guilty or ashamed because they see themselves as bad. And they also abruptly and dramatically change their self image, shown by suddenly changing their goals, opinions, careers, or friends. Why? Because they tend to sabotage their own progress. For instance, they may fail a test on purpose so they can ruin relationships or even get fired from a job. And this is very serious. I've been learning about BPD lately, histrionic narcissist. I did a video on histrionic narcissists a long time ago. I'll get into that again. Also, also their rapid mood changes. Rapid mood changes are something that people with BPD experience because they have sudden changes about how they feel about the world around them, themselves, and others. And their emotions are very irrational because their anger is uncontrollable. They have a lot of hatred, fear, sadness, and of course, their love. They change suddenly and frequently because it's uncontrollable. The mood swings are sudden. They last a few hours and rarely more than a few days, and their behavior is often impulsive and dangerous. This is why you hear episodes of reckless driving, fighting, gambling, binge eating, substance, unsafe sexual activity are very common with people who have BPD. Reported self harm or suicidal behavior. You have somebody who has BPD, they may injure, cut themselves, or threaten to do so, and they will have suicidal thoughts. And these acts are self destructive. They're usually triggered by rejection, possible abandonment, or disappointment in a caregiver or lover. Persistent feelings of emptiness. You have people who feel sad, bored, unfulfilled, empty, and their feelings are of worthlessness, and they're also in the self loathing. Anger management issues. People who have anger management issues with BPD, they have a lot of problems controlling their anger and they become angry very intensely. They may express their anger with bitterness and angry tirades. These episodes are often followed by shame and guilt, but they have a lot of angry tirades and bitterness. And we can also get into temporary temporary paranoid thoughts. temporary paranoid thoughts. These are dissociative episodes, paranoid thoughts, and sometimes hallucinations that may be triggered by extreme stress, usually fear of abandonment. Now, these symptoms are temporarily and usually not severe enough to be considered a separate disorder. So, when it comes to BPD, not everyone who has BPD experiences all these symptoms. So, what causes borderline personality disorder? Well, when we deal with healthcare providers, they believe results come from a combination of factors, including childhood abuse and trauma. So, up to 70% of people with BPD have experienced sexual, emotional, and physical abuse as a child, maternal separation, poor maternal attachment, inappropriate family boundaries, and parental substance use under, or they're associated, not under, their uses associated with BPD. Again, maternal separation, poor maternal attachment, inappropriate family boundaries, and parental substance use disorder are also associated with BPD. Getting back to genetics, studies also show that borderline personality disorder runs in families. So if you have a family history of BPD, you're more likely, but not guaranteed, to develop that condition. Brain changes. In people with BPD, these parts of the brain that control emotion and behavior don't communicate properly, so these problems affect the way their brain works. Again, let's go back to the poll. I still have 12 votes. Do American citizens have mental issues? 100% yes. And I still have 0 and a no's. So, again, how is borderline personality disorder diagnosed? Well, personality continues to evolve throughout child and adolescent development. So, because of this, healthcare providers don't typically diagnose someone with borderline personality disorder until after the age of 18 years old. So occasionally you may get a person who is younger than 18 that may be diagnosed with BPD if symptoms are significant and last at least 1 year. Now, personality disorders, including borderline personality disorders, may be difficult to diagnose, as most people with a personality disorder lack insight into their disruptive behavior and thought patterns. So, again, people with these personality disorders, if they don't have the insight, they're not going to understand the thought patterns, and they're not going to understand why their behavior is disruptive. So, when they do seek help, it's often due to conditions such as anxiety or depression as a result of the problems created by their personality disorder, such as divorce or lost relationships, not the disorder itself. So, to get all this put together, you need a licensed mental health professional such as a psychiatrist, psychologist, or a clinical social worker. Why? Because they can diagnose the borderline personality disorder based on a diagnostic criteria for BPD. Diagnostic criteria for BPD, which is borderline personality disorder. Now, it's in the APA, the American Psychiatric Association's Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. They do so by performing a thorough interview and having conversations about symptoms, and these questions they'll shed light on. I'm going to get to the questions right now. Now, these questions are like this. Personal medical history and family medical history, especially histories of mental health conditions. Previous work history, impulse control. So basically, mental health professionals often work with the person's family and friends to collect more insight into their behaviors and history. So How do we treat borderline personality disorder? Well, BPD has been challenging to treat, but with newer evidence-based treatment, many people with BPD experience fewer and less severe symptoms with improved functioning and, of course, a better quality of life. Now, as 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 we break everything down, you must understand effective treatment takes time, patience, and commitment. So, treatment may include psychotherapy, which is talk therapy, medications, or both. So, basically, your healthcare provider may recommend a short term hospital if you're very distressed or at a risk of harming yourself or others. So, during your stay, your healthcare provider will basically work with you to develop a treatment plan. So, people with borderline personality disorder often have other mental conditions. Mood disorders affect 80 to 96 people with BPD. Anxiety disorders, 88%. Substance use disorder, 64%. Eating disorders, 53%. ADHD, which is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, 10 to 30%. Bipolar disorder, 15%. Somatoform disorders, 10%. And if they have a coexisting condition, again, if they have a coexisting condition, they'll also need treatment for it. So, when it comes to borderline personality disorder, what about treatment? Treatment is very, very important. So, the type of treatment, and it was mentioned in the chat, DBT is dialectical behavior therapy. Now, this type of therapy was developed specifically for people with BPD. DTB focuses on helping you accept the reality of your life and your behaviors, as well as helping you learn to change your life, including unhelpful behaviors. It teaches skills to help you control intense emotions by reducing self destructive behaviors, and DBT helps improve relationships. Now, here's one that I've mentioned several times. It's called CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy. It's basically a goal oriented type of therapy, which is structured so your therapist or psychologist helps you take a close look at your thoughts and emotions. So basically, you'll come to understand how your thoughts affect your actions through CBT, and you can unlearn negative thoughts and behaviors and learn to adopt healthier thinking patterns and habits. And then again, group therapy, just like schizophrenia. This type of psychotherapy in which a group of people meets to describe and discuss their problems together under the supervision of a therapist or psychologist. Group therapy may help people improve with BPD to interact with others more positively and express themselves effectively. So, again, when it comes to medication, because the benefits of prescription medication for BPD are unclear, healthcare providers typically don't prescribe medications as the main treatment for BPD. As I continue to move on, however, when it comes to some cases, a psychiatrist may recommend medications to treat specific symptoms for co-occurring mental health care conditions. So basically, what the article is telling you is medications can treat anxiety and depression and regulate mood swings, and they can help control impulsive behavior with neuroleptic drugs, and those drugs will help some people with BPD. Now, unfortunately, there's no way to prevent borderline personality disorder. It's basically inherited by passing through families, which means you have an increased risk of developing the condition if you have a family history of BPD. So it's going to be passed down if you have a family history of BPD. So ask your healthcare provider how to recognize the signs of the disorder so you can get treatment as early as possible. Again, very interesting material. Now, prognosis and outlook for borderline personality disorder. And it's like this. Most of the time, BPD symptoms gradually decrease with age. So that means some people's symptoms disappear in their 40s. However, with the right treatment, many people with BPD learn to manage their symptoms and improve their quality of life. So basically, without treatment, people with borderline personality disorder have an increased risk of the following. Now, it's very similar to what I told you about schizophrenia because what's included? Self-harm, suicide, depression, substance use, and alcohol use. In fact, the risk of suicide with people who have BPD is 40 times that of the general population. So about 8% to 10% of people with BPD die by suicide. So many people with untreated BPD, which is again borderline personality disorder, also experience unstable or chaotic personal relationships and have trouble keeping a job. So they have an increased risk of divorce, estrangement from family members, and rocky relationships. They also have legal and financial problems, and they're very common. And they're also very dangerous as well. So, again, how can you help somebody with borderline personality disorder? You need to take time to learn about BPD to understand what your loved one is experienced or experiencing. Encourage your loved one to seek treatment for BPD, and you can ask about family therapy if they're a relative of yours, but offer emotional support. Have patience and understanding. Why? Because change can be difficult, frightening to people with BPD, but their symptoms can improve over time with treatment. So basically, you have to seek therapy for yourself if you're experiencing significant stress or symptoms of mental health conditions such as anxiety or depression. So choose a different therapist from the person your loved one is seeing. Now, again, people with BPD have a significantly higher rate of self-harming and suicidal behavior than the general population. People with BPD who are thinking of harming themselves or attempted suicide, they need help right away. So, again, if you know somebody who has BPD, what you do, you got to call the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. The toll-free number is 1-800-273-TALK or 1-800-273-8255. So again, to sum it up, when it comes to borderline personality disorder, it's important to understand that BPD is a mental health condition, and as with all mental health conditions, seeking help as soon as symptoms appear can help decrease the disruptions to life. So mental health professionals can offer treatment plans that can help people with BPD manage their thoughts and behaviors. So the family members and loved ones of people with borderline personality disorder often experience stress, depression, grief, and isolation. So it is important to take care of your mental health and seek help if you're experiencing these symptoms. Now, after going through borderline personality disorder, there seems to be some similarities that are tied to schizophrenia. Now, again, to go back what I just talked about, we had the open panel. Brother Nate was here. Shout out to him. I talked about borderline personality disorders. I talked about the Napoleon Syndrome. and I talked about schizophrenia. Well, one last topic I need to hit on. I need to hit on the Stockholm syndrome. Um, and again, let me go back and put the link to borderline personality disorder in the chat. Here's the article for yourself. I am putting it in the chat. And thank you, Samantha P, for coming into the chat. And for all those who are in the clouds, thank you for viewing this content as well. I really appreciate it. The article that I did on borderline personality disorder is, of course, in the chat. And the last topic I'm going to touch upon tonight is we talk about Stockholm syndrome. And I'm going to go by, and it's going to be by, again, WebMD, Stockholm syndrome. I'm going to keep the boat moving. Hey, shout out to you, brother Davis. Shout out to you. Stockholm syndrome. It's one name you've probably heard of. And if you hadn't, it's going to take us home. What is Stockholm syndrome? And Stockholm syndrome, we're going to get into the causes. When we deal with Stockholm syndrome, basically it's an emotional response. Now, it happens to some abused and hostage victims when they have positive feelings toward an abuser or captor. So, with all that being said, does that explain what Stockholm syndrome really is? Well, if that doesn't, I'm going to go ahead and explain what Stockholm syndrome is. Stockholm syndrome isn't a psychological diagnosis. Instead, it's a way of understanding emotional responses that some people do have. In other words, they defend their captor or abuser. Sometimes people who are held prisoner are subject to abuse and can have feelings of sympathy or other positive feelings toward the captor. I actually saw a movie last night that took place during World War II, and I saw a lot of Stockholm syndrome where a soldier, he was abusing other soldiers. It was time for him when his number was up, and one soldier said he has rights as well. In other words, he defended that soldier, the Japanese soldier who abused some of the other soldiers. Now, again, when it comes to Stockholm syndrome, it basically happens over days, weeks, months, or years of captivity and close contact with the captor. So a bond basically can grow between the victim and the captor. And this can lead to kind treatment and less harm from the abuser, as they might also create a positive bond with their victims. Again, Brother Davis says Stockholm syndrome is the reason blacks can't truly seem to do for themselves. You know, I will say that's an element of truth to that, because a number of blacks, Brother Davis, are very emotional. That's the big problem with a number of blacks. And some of them cannot understand the real world. Now, someone who has Stockholm syndrome might have confusing feelings toward their abuser. And this has to do with sympathy, a desire to protect their abuser. They empathize with their abuser, and some of them might even fall in love with their abuser. So, Stockholm syndrome may cause the hostage to have negative feelings toward the police or anyone who might try to attempt the rescue. So people have likely experienced this syndrome for a long time. Now, it got its name in 1973 by Nils Bergevik, who is a criminologist in Stockholm, Sweden. He used the term to explain the unexpected reaction to hostages of a bank raid that happened in Stockholm Syndrome toward their captor. Now, despite being held against their will in a life threatening situation, these individuals made positive relationships with their captors. They even helped them pay for their lawyers after they were caught. It also been a game to help them get released. So, why do you get Stockholm Syndrome? Why do you get Stockholm Syndrome? Because not all people who are in situations experience Stockholm Syndrome. Why? Because it's not entirely clear why some people react this way, but it's thought to be a survival mechanism where a person might create these bonds as a way to cope with the extreme and terrifying situation. And sometimes after Stockholm Syndrome, you can have post traumatic stress disorder. You can start reliving the event, the terrifying event. So, some pieces seem to increase the likelihood of a Stockholm Syndrome. They include being emotionally in charge, be in an emotionally charged situation for a long time. Excuse me. Being in a space with the hostage taker with poor conditions. This is, you definitely know when you are a prisoner of war. Physically uncomfortable, not enough food. Hostages are basically dependent on the hostage taker for basic needs. Again, prisoners of war. When threats to life aren't carried out, mock executions. When hostages haven't been dehumanized. This is all included in Stockholm Syndrome. Now, a person might be abused and severely threatened by a captor or an abuser, but they also rely on them to survive. So, if the abuser is kind in any way, they might cling to this as a coping mechanism for survival. They might have sympathy toward them for this kindness. Now, there isn't much research on Stockholm Syndrome. Why? Because it seems that it's not just people who are held hostage who experience it, it can happen in different settings. Child abuse, and this is very important. Abuse can be very confusing for children. Why? Because abusers often threaten and physically harm their victims, but they might also show kindness that can be interpreted as love or affection. So basically, an emotional bond can grow between the child and the abuser that often protects the abuser for a long time. Sports. Children or youth who have abusive athletic coaches might develop Stockholm Syndrome. If they start to rationalize the coach's behavior, they may defend or sympathize with them. This might lead to having Stockholm Syndrome. Abuse. Sexual, physical, or emotional domestic abuse can lead to confusing emotional bonds between the victim and abuser. And sex trafficking. People who are trafficked and forced into sex trades work, they basically become dependent on captors for basic needs. This might develop an emotional bond as a way to survive. And a lot of this is definitely taking place out here. So, impact of Stockholm Syndrome on health. Well, Stockholm Syndrome, again, isn't listed as a formal mental health diagnosis in the DSM. The DSM is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. It's known as the DSM 5. So people who have this syndrome seem to have other common symptoms, though. Now, here are they. Here they are. They're going to have guilt and confusion, embarrassment about their emotions toward an abuser. When it comes to trust, they're going to have difficulty trusting others. Again, like I said, PTSD, post traumatic stress disorder, insomnia. Insomnia is a sleeping disorder. Flashbacks, nightmares, startling easily. In other words, they're easy to startle. Again, this is generally what happens. Now, after abuse or being held captive, they might also have other symptoms. And I've always said that when it comes to issues, there's always some connection. And there's always some connection to other issues. Again, the captive, after you've been held captive, you're going to have these symptoms. And the big word that's at the top of the list, just like in schizophrenia, and of course, well, it wasn't in it was in borderline personality disorder, denial. You're gonna have social withdrawal. That was also common to schizophrenia, chronic feeling of tension, depression, anxiety. That was also part of schizophrenia. Feelings of emptiness, feelings of hopelessness, learned helplessness, excessive dependence, and then you're going to have a loss of interest in activities, very similar to schizophrenia. Now, again, when it comes to Stockholm Syndrome, I'm going to say this. If you feel you have Stockholm Syndrome or you know somebody who might, you need to speak to a therapist. Therapy can get you through recovery, post-traumatic stress disorder, anxiety, and depression. So basically, a therapist, a good therapist. Now, I will get into therapist in a moment, but a good one can help you learn coping mechanisms and help you process the way you feel. So basically, their job is to help you reassign attitudes and emotions to understand that this is a survival mechanism you use to get through an experience. So basically, to sum up Stockholm Syndrome, Stockholm Syndrome is when you have a hostage, they start to show empathy, love, they start to defend the abuser. Now, for the most part, particularly if you're a prisoner of war, you want to have some empathy for the abuser so you can survive. Again, if you don't believe me, you watch some of these old movies about prisoners of war, what they have to go through. And some prisoners of war, because I've been in the military, when foreign nationals were captured in World War II and the Iraq War, well, if you were an American or English person, well, in the military, they have what you call the Geneva Convention. Well, when it comes to the Geneva Convention, America and England and Canada, we follow it. But when it comes to other countries, they don't follow it. But overall, tonight, I talked about Napoleon Syndrome. Napoleon Syndrome it's classified as a short man syndrome, but it basically has an inferiority complex to where a short man, he wants to feel a little more taller, so he's going to overextend himself to feel taller in his mind. He's basically insecure with himself. Then you have schizophrenia. basically with schizophrenia, just like I put an example out on Bernard Riley's panel when brother Little Big Nate, and shout out to him, he was on my panel tonight. He actually put up some facts, and a brother didn't want to deal with the facts. He kept on saying the individual is wrong. So when you have facts and you're trying to present them to people, some people aren't going to listen to your facts. And the reason why they don't want to listen to your facts is because, number one, they feel that they're always right. And when it comes to schizophrenia, there's going to be some delusion. There's going to be some impulsivity. And just like Napoleon Syndrome, you're going to have to seek help. Now, again, Napoleon Syndrome is not really a disorder. It's not in the DSM, but it's based on how you see yourself. And then you get in your borderline personality disorder, and cognitive behavioral therapy is one way you can help. You have different medicines. Now, again, I will tell you, medicines will not cure borderline personality disorder. What medicines will do is they will relieve the symptoms. With personality disorders, you got to seek help. And many people are really afraid to seek help. You have to seek help. With borderline personality disorders, you can have binge eating, substance abuse, suicide, stress, anxiety. And then when we get to Stockholm Syndrome can present post-traumatic stress disorder, which there's going to be insomnia, nightmares. You're going to relive the traumatic event. You're going to defend the accuser. Now, in some situations, for the most part, if you're in a situation, particularly as a prisoner of war, you want survival. Shout out to Brother Davis. He was in therapy for 6 years. It helps a lot. Well, shout out to you. You're doing pretty good right now. And just make sure if something happens, you go back to therapy. And there's nothing wrong. And I want to get this out here before I close out. It is nothing wrong with seeking help. Now, something I'm going to get into, and I'm going to tie it all in. I'm going to get into substance abuse, gambling. A lot of these issues that you see and hear, although they're not listed in the diagnostical statistical manual for mental disorders, they're very prevalent. And when they're very prevalent, for the most part, they can have an effect on your life, your family, especially if there's money that's going to be involved. Now, some of us, we might not be serious, but these are incidents where you can hurt yourself. It's very important that you understand when you have a problem. Denying it is not going to help. You have to deal with it. And as hard as it is to deal with something because you might be shamed, when it comes to you as an individual, you want to make sure that you're in a position to help yourself. See, part of navigating yourself through life takes a variety of steps. It's not just physical, it's not just financial, it's also psychological and emotional. If everything is working, you have to maintain it. Now, when it comes to human beings are up and down because situations arise, divorces, child custody cases, deaths. So, the best thing to do is you have to be accountable for who you are. Again, you have to be accountable. And let me take it one step further. I don't know to be accountable. Know yourself. Too many of us, we look at others. And when it comes to psychology, before we start calling someone a narcissist or saying they have borderline personality disorder, understand what the term is. Now, again, I'm not a licensed psychologist. I just read the information. And I read the information and I paraphrase the information. And then I take the information and I actually utilize an event so I can give you an example of the behavioral problem that I'm talking about. When it comes to life, you only have one. It can be taken from you at any time. So I know a lot of us, it's good to believe in God. Got to have this spiritualness. But besides that, to be stable, it's not just, again, financial. You have to have your mind right. And again, as human beings, we have other human beings that tend to upset us. Jealousy. And jealousy comes from a lot of different people, including your own family. So I believe what we have to do is to keep ourselves up health wise, mentally, socially, and we have to get rid of the dead weight. Social media can be a good tool, but for the most part, it's not the social media. It's not even the TV. It's the people who are on the TV. Get rid of the wrong influences. Get yourself right. You can make it out here. Certainly, it's going to be harder for some people based on their environment. As what we discovered with schizophrenia and borderline personality disorder. But understand all the information that I'm giving you. You take what you want and you dismiss what you don't want. But anyway, help yourself out because you are all you've got. And that's my commentary for this edition of the 411 Talk Zone radio show right here on YouTube. If you like what I just presented, please comment, share, and subscribe. And if you're looking for some more educational content, check out the QCIS channel, formerly the Mind of STEM channel. Now, if you cannot find the 411 Talk Zone radio show or the Mind of STEM channel on YouTube, you can check me out on Twitter. Now for the QCIS channel, I take it one step further since it's an educational and professional channel. You can find the QCIS channel on LinkedIn. And before I go, let's check the poll out. I only had 12 votes tonight. So tonight wasn't a busy night, but that's okay. I got through it. So, do today's American citizens have mental health issues? Out of 12 votes, 100% yes. And there were no no's. And I'd like to thank Little Big Nate for coming up on the panel. And I'd like to thank the chat. And at the end of the day, I'm going to leave you with this. Be blessed for what you have. Don't worry about what you don't have. Always know that the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. And for individuals that can get a little pushy about what's being said with the content, or you have individuals that may believe that you could be talking about them, but you're not really talking about them, but they may volunteer themselves out. This is what I always say. If it doesn't apply, just let it fly. But if the shoe fits, wear it. If you don't like the shoe, change it. And again, if you want to check out the video that I did last night on child support, do mothers pay child support? Or do mothers want to pay child support? Definitely check that video out. And again, the Judge Vonda B, she's a judge. She's an elected judge. She was a lawyer who did child support cases down in Texas. So the show that she has reflects real cases. Although there may be actors, she's depicting what really happens when women have to pay child support as well. And that video is going to show you what happens when women are put in the hot seat when it comes to paying child support. And once again, thank you for listening to this edition of the 411 Talk Zone radio show right here on YouTube. I'll be back up next week with another hot show, and I'm also continue to do some pre-recorded content. Be there or be square. And once again, my name is Leon Jones. I want you to have a wonderful and gracious night. God bless you. I'm out.